Okay. And I didn't get a chance to say this when you guys were all chatting, but Chad and Jeff, thank you for joining us, especially given that Chad, you thought this was tomorrow and not today. Sorry about that. I am gonna turn it over to Matt to do the introductions. And I'm gonna go let dogs out because I haven't had a chance to do that since I got home from work, and then I'll be back. But thank you guys for joining us. And Matt, go ahead and take it away with the introductions.
Okay, so my name is Matt Morgan, and like Alicia said, I kind of prodded Chad into doing this. I met Chad this summer when we were training up in Pennsylvania, and I got to talking to him about VHDF and this and that and everything about the organization. And I thought it was really neat, and just asked him if he'd have enough time to do this tonight. And so Chad Burt is the president of the VHDF, and he's from upstate New York in a town called Corning, I believe is the name. And also tonight, joining Chad at the presentation is Jeff Funk. Is that how you pronounce your last name, Jeff?
Funke.
Funke, sorry. Okay.
Yes,
Jeff
sir.
Funke from Nampa, Idaho, correct?
Correct.
And you're currently the director of judging and testing and judging, and a founding member of the Versatile Hunting Dog Federation. So we appreciate you guys coming on tonight and telling us a little bit about the organization and how everything works. And with that, I'll turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Before we get started, I'm going to share a presentation. I sent a request in. I don't know who owns the meeting, but it said it had to be approved.
All right, so that was Alicia, and I know she just said that she stepped up and let her dogs in.
Okay. All right. Well, we can get kicked off. I'll try to share it when she's back. So anyways, yeah, thanks for the introduction, Matt. And by the way, congratulations to yourself and any of the other folks. I know Daryl had some success as well. And I probably can't see everybody on here, but I know that several of you folks just got back from the Invitational. And congratulations, first off, on making it there, because that means you had a prize win utility dog, which we love. And for those that passed, congratulations. For those that may not have, congratulations, because you got a heck of a hunting partner. So I didn't get to see anybody out there this year, unfortunately, because I didn't make it in time to see anyone when I traveled out west here. But anyway, so I know you guys are busy traveling and just getting back home as well. So busy times. Yes, and so thank you for offering or inviting us to participate from the Versatile Hunting Dog Federation. The point for today will be to give a general overview of the organization. We'll talk a little bit about it. We will talk about NAVDA as well, only because they're so closely related but different. Also, we won't talk too much about AKC hunt tests, but maybe some of the German system when we talk about some of how the scoring works and those sorts of things. But this is really for you guys, obviously. So all I ask is that please interrupt, ask questions as we go. As Matt mentioned, Jeff's a founding member. He's also, he can introduce himself, I guess, a little bit more, but he's also been well versed in the NAVDA circuit and been around there for many decades, and been part of, sitting on the corporate board there as well. Maybe we could see if my sharing request, I see that
I approved it.
You're back. Oh, perfect.
Sorry,
right.
I wasn't here when you.
No worries. I was just rambling on a couple things anyway. So let me share my screen. So you're going to, you're because I'm a day late and $1 short, I was going to edit this presentation. and unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to. Is it sharing?
Yep.
Okay, it should be in presentation mode. All right, so I did a Rough Grouse Society presentation. It was for women. This is my daughter, but I don't have time to edit anything, so I'm just going with the slides that I got. I'll open it up the same way. So my daughter shoots competitive trap and skeet. She was the New York #1 skeet shooter this year for varsity high school and went to nationals as well. But anyways, she's off to college now, and she participates with running dogs, the same as my son. This was geared up because I was talking to women, so I was just sharing that piece. A little bit of a safety moment. Again, I'll skip through some of these slides. I'm not going to skip this one. I think it's important. We talked about hunting, and that's what our organizations are about in support of our dogs. So this is my dog, Ripley. She's a German short-haired pointer. Last year, somewhere in Montana, she picked up a grass on, or in Idaho, I think it was Montana. And, she had a pretty difficult, maybe 4 to 5 months. Her appetite had slowed down. She wasn't eating. They were checking her because I live in the Northeast. It's always Lyme disease activity that we look for. We did a bunch of testing on her. Everything came back fine. And, I had known several folks who had issues with grass-ons where they ingested them and had similar problems. So, we ended up going to Ithaca, to Cornell, and started doing ultrasounds, and they found fluid in her chest. Long story short, she had a pretty invasive surgery. She had a full stenography. It was exploratory. As soon as they opened her up, the doctor had thought that this mass was cancer and she was cancerous. But based on the information I had given them, they did sampling and sent it out, and saw that there was bacteria based that looked like it was something foreign in there based on a grass on, or based on some sort of grass fibers. So anyways, this large mass was taken off of her. It was on her heart, her lung, her sternum, her rib cage. Likely, she wasn't going to live much longer, I don't think, because when they tried to pull it off of her heart, her blood pressure had crashed a few times, and during the surgery, but they were able to get her back up and going. So this is, something we love to do, is go hunting. And this is important because our dogs are like our family members, and, we love them very much. And this was a very difficult decision for me to go through, and it was very costly to go through as well, as you could imagine. But we ended up going through the surgery, and they removed this mass, and the dog was on antibiotics for about 4 months and has recovered fully. She's actually right outside the door here, back in Montana again, and I look forward to hunting her. There's not really much I can say for prevention of grass-ons. I wish there was. Be aware of it. Keep your dog's face, nose, eyes clean as much as you can. When you're in that cheatgrass, foxtail, there's 12 or 15 different species out here in the Midwest that I've learned. You have to be as cautious as you can. A lot of you folks are probably well aware, more than myself, because you live out here. But it's one of the dangers and one of the hazards we have from the hunting dog world. So anyways, wanted to share that because it's in the presentation. So the Versatile Hunting Dog Federation, again, don't pay attention to the dates here, but what we are. And I think there's some feedback on here. I don't know. I'm getting if somebody's unmuted. That's better. What the Versatile Hunting Dog Federation is, we'll get into the history. So, and Jeff is really good at this and knows this very well. But essentially, our program was brought about because, I guess in North America, as we migrated some of the German testing system and some of the European testing system, NABDA was created, I think, in 1958 or 1960, I guess is what it says here. And there was a lot of influence from the German system, as most know from Bodo. It was, in fact, probably mostly based on the German system and European system. And as time progressed with NABDA, and through the 70s, there were some changes. There was a lot of growth that happened. There was a need to have, or a want to have, more of a sporting dog event, and to have some of the growth that we see today with NAVDA. And at that point, there was some discussions, probably in the 90s and for certain into the early 2000s, about getting back to a hunting organization and a 10-point system and the value that it has from a breeding perspective, as well as individuals and dogs. Individual owners. I mean, there's a benefit if I'm an individual owner and I want to go find a Pudelpointer, and I'm particularly fond of duck hunting, or in a cold climate, I probably want to care about the dog's coat, and I probably want to care about the water drive, and those sorts of things. So, there is a need for some of that, and a want for some of that. And there was a lot of influence from the founding fathers of NAVDA, I guess, as well, that were part of VHDF. And I'll pause when I'm done here and let Jeff fill in the blanks. But, the organization was created in 2007. It's been in existence, what I would say previous to that, it's really from the 1800s and early 1900s, because it's really based a lot on the German system. So our testing is different. It's formatted differently, because of some things that we have in North America. Some of the grasslands and the prairies and the big hunting ability that you have, and the dog search ability, is much different requirements than a smaller footprint that you're going to find in the European type hunting style, where the land is a lot smaller and it's maybe less desirable. So some of that German system has, I guess, transformed into a North American system, but it's still based on the same foundational merits. The 10-point system, the subjects that we're looking at, and that's sort of the nickel tour from my perspective of how VHDF got started. There was a want and a need for it. It's based on hunting. We will always stand on that we are not looking. We are looking for growth, but we will not sacrifice growth for just to have growth for sport. We want growth for hunting. You'll find that in our organization. If you're around, or anybody that's been around it or tested in it, hopefully you feel that it's more relaxed. There's not prizes given out. It's strictly scoring. And what we're looking for is the dog's inherent traits are valued with a multiplier of 2 versus a trained trait, which is a multiplier of 1. So again, you're really trying to identify, dogs that have the ability to, have good progeny and produce well. And, rather than trained traits, we really want to make sure that we exemplify inherent traits. And we're going to get into more details of those things. Jeff, anything to add here on the history? That's the nickel tour. I know you have a bunch more information, so please share some.
Sure. There's quite a bit there. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. But I think, you mentioned the need, and that primarily was in a couple areas. One, to increase selection pressure in the dogs that we breed. And in order to do that, we needed a more granular scoring system, hence the 10-point plus system. Additionally, there was a huge need for a test that incorporated a higher level of natural ability. So if you go straight from a progeny test, like a natural ability test, to an individual test, like a utility test, the utility test is primarily a trained event, and most of the subjects in the utility test come from good training, good handling, and of course you got to have a decent dog to start with. But you're really missing out on a lot of the aptitudes that are involved in hunting that we might look at at a gun dog level or a breeder's type level. So that was the other big part of it. We felt that there needed to be a test there, and that's our advanced aptitude test, which does incorporate training, but it's only given half the value that the inherited subjects are given. So those were the two main needs. And other than that, I guess a little interesting tidbit, the idea was actually started at a NAVDA judges workshop. I was, at the time, I was a judge, a senior judge, a clinic leader for NAVDA, and I was on the international board of directors for NAVDA as director of testing. And there was a lot of people that were looking for kind of a higher level ability test. So something to confirm natural abilities in more of a gun dog type level. And that's where the idea came up. And then a few people got interested. And then when we got serious about it, most of the people weren't interested. It's too much work to start something new. So at the time, I believe it was myself and Joe Schmutz and Bodo Winter helped to a certain extent. He was in the very early phases of this. And we sat down and we had email at the time, 2007. So, and Ed Bailey was a huge part of writing the rules. He had a lot of influence on that, on keeping things simple and allowing the judges to be judges. And so we came up with a test format, and I think the next year we had a couple of affiliates start and run tests, and from there it's remained a relatively low key organization until recently. The folks that have been involved see a lot of value in it, and I think they would like to expand it a little bit. And that's one of the reasons we're here tonight, to answer any questions that you guys might have. So I'll send it back.
All right. Any questions so far on the history? Okay. All right. And like I said, I'm going to use this, just as some formatting to keep the conversation fluid. Please interrupt and we'll get into some more detail. So, along with some of the history of why it was started, there's also, I think, some of the benefits that we'll talk about. And again, these are high level, and we'll keep, parsing down into details as you guys come up with more questions. The first bullet point here is effectively why I think, you guys are on the call, and the usefulness for breeders and breed clubs, for folks who are interested in enhancing and improving, dog's traits, specifically the Pudelpointer, for this meeting. What are some of the benefits of that and some of the history that you guys look for? It'd be interesting for us to hear some of that, and how maybe, if you have minimum testing, if you have minimum requirements for breeding, which I'm sure you do, how you look at some of that and what you have found useful, what's not useful, where you wish you had more information. And I think we'll be able to maybe talk about some of the benefits of the Versatile Hunting Dog Federation for probably various parts of maybe some of your input there. I think one of the things too to remember, that we not only offer testing, and this is probably maybe part of the onset here, when we think about testing for field and we think about testing in water, because we're talking about versatile hunting dogs. Also, we have some complementary things that go very well with testing, and frankly, I don't think they're used enough in the dog breeding world. One is confirmation. So we have a very detailed confirmation, what I would say hunting dog confirmation. This is not something that you're going to see at Westminster, and we're trotting dogs around inside a ring, and we do trot them, but we're not looking at the details, and certainly we don't have the keen eye that some of those folks seem to be. For 30 seconds can pick out a breed winner, after an hour's worth of dogs. So we're not that good. But what I would say is our judges are very well trained, in the Pat Hastings method, and Jeff will probably talk a little bit about this as well. But it's really what we're looking at is the form and the function and the coat and the durability, mostly from a hunting perspective for these dogs. We don't get into science and dental, dental type activities. We do what I think a more integrated review of the mouth, maybe than what you're used to, review of the mouth rather. But there are definitely some benefits I think that you can garner from a testing system, and it's also based on 10 points. And we'll get into more of these details. But I want to focus a lot on why you folks are specifically on the call, which is about breeding and potentially maybe to use the Federation for some of your standards for improvement. Again, it's a 10-point system. We talked about the granularity. What do you get out of that? And we'll talk a lot about NAVDA. And first, I'll say two things. So, you heard Jeff mention that he was on the international board and he's been very active. This is not a comparison from one to another. It's more of a partnership, and it's easy to bring them up because most folks are familiar with NAVDA. I personally still use NAVDA. Just ran 2 utility tests a month ago.
Actually, if you'd like me to come out, no, you gotta make too much noise.
Yeah. Just take a picture of the screens because
This is all recorded.
Oh,
You can watch this whole thing.
okay. All right.
Is there a question there, Rebecca? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was on mute.
Oh, no, sorry about that.
Talking to the
and all
husband, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And all I was going to say is, I'm a life member as well as Jeff. And, this is not I always like to preface this because we're not talking to compare because one's better than the other. We're talking to compare because people understand a lot of times the NAVDA system because they have experience there. So the one thing I'll say though, when you get into the granularity perspective of a 10-point system, in my opinion, we're very good at rewarding dogs at higher levels where, NAVDA maybe isn't. I think it's a little easier to find dogs that don't perform at a high level in NAVDA for various reasons, because I think you can get a lot of 4s just by training. So it easily identifies lower ranking dogs. And this is my personal opinion. This is not on behalf of VHDF. But I think the VHDF system with a 10-point is really good at identifying dogs that stand out because of the 10-point system. So as an example, if you had 4s in NAVDA, that's 76% or higher, you may find that our 10-point system, a dog could get 6s, 6, 7, 8s being a good category, and still would be at the same level as a 4 in NAVDA. But where you're going to differentiate is when you see dogs that get 8s, 9s, and 10s, which are still 4s, but you're starting to parse out the higher end quality, specifically if you're looking at inherent traits, things like pointing and search. And if you're really trying to build that water, if you're trying to build those things, you're going to start to weed through all the 4s that are in the funnel in NAVDA, and you're going to start to see that when you start to look at 8s, 9s, and 10s versus 6, 7s, and 8s, or you specifically want to look at 9s and 10s, it's easier to weed through all the seeds that are in this funnel and pick out the ones that you want to plant, right? And ones that you may, there's obviously no guarantees in breeding anytime, but it's easier to look at some of this data if you're a data miner specifically like I am, and it's easy to see some commonality. It's easier to get some of the details over the 10-point system. So, and again, this isn't the conclusion for the meeting, but I'm just following this format here that I've already had built. It was a short presentation. The progeny testing, some of what I think is valuable as well is in our data system, you can specifically look up a sire or a dam, and you can see what that dog has produced throughout all of its litters, and it's an average. So if you had a dam that was bred to 5 different stud dogs, that progeny for her specifically is going to show, any dog that was tested in the system. If all those litters were tested, you're going to see averages for water work, you know, for steadiness and field search, all those things you're going to see, and you can quickly identify without hardly any work at all. You can quickly identify, you know, not only stud dogs, which a lot of people do, but you can also look at NAMS, because obviously they're just as important, or should be maybe more important in some cases, than stud dogs. But like I said, you can look at some of that data and look at all the testing without putting it into another piece of software. That's something that we offer right on our test data. The more dogs, obviously, we can get into the system, the better the data quality is going to be, and the more robust it's going to be when you're trying to identify dogs specifically for breeding. Okay, so I'm going to skip through some of these things, but I'm going to talk about them because I think they're important, specifically when we talk about inherent traits. So what you're trying to build for all of us when we think about breeding and or an owner, you know, you want to understand some things that have conflicting issues, right? So the first point here, you know, dogs that are driven to retrieve, point and hold, and point in time, but also you want a dog that's going to be independent, and you want a dog that's going to have cooperation. So, you know, when you start to think about the conflicts of breeding, it's actually remarkable where we've gotten dogs since the inception of them, in my opinion, just to see how diverse they are and how they can segment a specific task and sort it out and actually perform that task. And dogs that can segment better and dogs that can perform better are dogs that are what? Easier to train. Most times they have higher cooperation, or they have higher instincts and abilities, such as retrieving and natural backing. Those are all great things, and who doesn't want to make it easier to train a dog? If you don't think that's something that you need, you know, you may not have trained many dogs. But you know, anybody out there that's had more than a handful of dogs or a couple knows exactly what I'm talking about. And you know, the dogs of a lifetime that are out there, you know, I think that there's a lot of dogs of a lifetime that are just not identified, and those dogs aren't bred as much as others, and they probably need to be. So, you know, like I said, those dogs that can, you know, segment some of that ability out quicker, you want to be able to identify those dogs because it's not training that got them there. You know, a couple of the other points: to search 100% independently in water. Yeah, check in with us when we hunt on land. You know, I've been around a while, and you guys have too. There's dogs that have a lot of ability, and you know, you let them go at the line, and we're going to go on a hunt, and the dog is gone. It's hunting for itself. You know, you're whistling. You know, the handler has to whistle the thing back. So again, that doesn't necessarily always show up on a scorecard. Why? Because that's usually going to get hit with cooperation. A lot of it is overlooked, unfortunately, in my opinion, specifically in a 4-point system or other systems other than 10-point, because, you know, you don't know how much hacking. When I look at a scorecard, if I didn't walk the brace or walk the field rather, I don't know how much was the dog hacked, how much did it actually listen, you know, what was its range. It's usually a much different outcome of what the handler or the owner tells you than what actually, you know, you might have witnessed or happened to see. Again, a 10-point system is going to identify those things, because a dog's not going to get 10s. It might have got 4s everywhere in a 4-point system, and it might get 10s everywhere for pointing and steadiness and all those things, but it's not going to when you look at a dog that's totally independent and, you know, is not hunting as a partnership in the field with its owner or handler. Never point in water, only track and recover. Yeah, always point on land until the handler is nearby. I love that one because we've built into these dogs that the dog needs to understand tracking a duck or tracking some sort of waterfowl. But yet in the field, we expect it to track or point it and deliver it back to hand. But when a handler is not nearby, what a dog does when we do duck searches or search behind ducks is much different sometimes than, you know, what happens in the field. And the water work that we do is a little bit different. We have search behind duck, and we'll get into some of those discussions as well and why that's important. again, you're looking for inherent traits and, you know, trying to identify some of those strong points in dogs that can dissect and understand those things. So,
Dennis,
yes, Jeff.
I think Jeff was yelling at his VC.
Oh,
I was sorry. I thought I was tuned out also.
I'll mute you,
Hmm.
Jeff.
yeah. So again, you know, these are, you know, some of this is, you know, not for education purposes for this group, but I think it's important to kind of understand and reset all of us into where we've came with dogs and why breeding and selective breeding is important, and why we can identify, or why we need to identify traits and some of these natural abilities that dogs have, because we all know, you know, you're always trying to improve what you're breeding, but you have to be most careful of what you're going to give up. And that's something that I've learned. That's probably the most important thing. I don't want to lose what I already have, but I want to gain more. And that's not always easy to do. So, you know, again, just some food for thought about also the 10-point system. I try to correlate some of what each of those things are, and how that should play a part in a breeding program. So we'll get into a little bit of testing here. So this is actually a picture from last year in Montana where you can see, you know, multiple dogs backing. I don't think you can see the handler. But anyways, so some more of the science, I'll say, behind it, you know, the desire, the cooperation, and the obedience. And again, why do we want to identify those things? Because they're super important. To me, these three items are probably, you know, unless the dog doesn't like to go in the water or doesn't want to do a search, but most of our dogs have that ability, some more than others. But these three things to me are the most critical things when you start to understand and think about why you want to identify, you know, more details in a scoring system, because desire, cooperation, and obedience, and how those things all play together. And, you know, why we want to understand and why we want to reward those things, because those are the dogs that are going to be way easier, not only for the breeder, and you're probably going to have more success with testing results, and you're probably going to have more success from folks who are purchasing your dog, because everyone loves Bob's dog because Bob's dog is so easy to train. And I've hunted behind Bob's dog and it does all this stuff. How do I get Bob's dog? Right? A lot of that comes with a great balance of desire, cooperation, and obedience, which, you know, some of it's the trained ability, but the desire and cooperation. I mean, when you can start to balance those things and identify dogs that balance those well, those are the kind of things that, you know, you want to reward. So the trained subjects in VHDF, so these should look familiar. You know, steadiness and manners on game, retrieving on land and water, blind retrieve, a game drag, and obedience. So those are the trained subjects that we have. As Jeff started to mention, there's 3 formal tests that we offer. The hay test, which is a puppy test. This is generally a dog. Me personally, I like to see a dog have this test completed within 12 months. Not always practical, depending on testing locations and weather. But this is really, you know, this is an aptitude test. Will come to me when I call it, and, you know, I have some sort of a relationship with it. Other than that, you know, a dog, you know, in this test really, you know, should be showing its natural abilities. We do suggest that the dog is 16 months or under. It's not required. You can bring your, you know, 10-year-old dog to this event and enter it in a hay test, and that's perfectly fine. That doesn't typically ever happen, but the ability's there to do that. So, and then I'll talk about the AHAVE, and Jeff, I'll ask you to go into some details on some of these subjects and maybe add any color to it that you like. The advanced hunting aptitude evaluation. So this is what I would say, this is what we always called the gun dog test. The gun dog test is something that we always coined that term for this. This is a dog that probably has had at least 1 year. It could have been a young year of hunting under its belt. Maybe it was 4 months old, 6 months old, or up to 2 hunting seasons, right? Is what, you know, again, the dog can be 5 years old and run an AHA. That's fine. But really, if you're looking for value and you're looking for, you know, good information out of it, it's probably a dog that's had, you know, a couple of hunting seasons under its belt. It's expected to have, you know, some manners. It's expected to have some training, no different than hunting. It's not a utility test for those who are wondering about NAVDA. The difference, a lot of it's similar, but the difference is all the heavy obedience in a utility test is not part of this test. You know, there's no steadiness at a blind, and you know, there's no healing and those types of things. It's really inherent traits. And the last thing I'll say, you can start to see these multipliers of 2 versus 1, and this is the inherent traits and how they're rewarded separately versus trained traits, which are a multiplier of 1. But Jeff, if you want to talk about these scorecards and, you know, maybe some of your examples of these categories, what you've seen testing and what you've seen maybe from progeny reports. I know you have some good examples of dogs, you know, who have thrown litters we're going to see, you know, very high scores of, and you can track that, and just maybe tie in the last few slides of what I talked about, you know, with our scoring system.
Sure. I think if you look at the scorecards, you can see that the hay test is in many ways very similar to the NAVDA natural ability test. There are some differences, but the biggest difference is how it's scored. We do go into more detail. We run fewer dogs. We don't run 10 dogs in a day. You know, we usually run 6 or 7. We might ask a dog to do a task more than once. If we did something at 7 in the morning and there was no wind, and you know, we felt that maybe we wanted to see something else, we might come back later and do a task again, just to see. But where you're going to get the biggest difference there is in that 70-point possible score for the dog that gets all 10s. 70 is pretty rare. The highest score that I think is in the system is 75 points. So Chad mentioned this earlier. What that progeny test will do is an excellent job at identifying the very high quality animals. I looked while Chad was talking, I looked at your breeding requirements for Pudelpointer Society, and I noticed for your females, it's a 105 or above in the NA test. So you have from a 105 to a 112 to select from. And I realize you can go to higher level tests. You can go to the new gun dog test or the utility test if you want further evaluation. But those all take time. And by the time you get through those higher level tests, the dog might be 3 or 4 years old. So you'd really like to have a good blueprint at a young age, and that scoring system will do that for you, and it works quickly. Just a couple of examples. I like, in my own personal breeding program and in my belief system, I like to identify what I call very important producers, very important dogs. Typically for me, that's a female, because you know, there's a lot of males out there that get bred a lot of times, so you can get a lot of statistics on male dogs. It's much harder to get statistics on the best producing female dogs. So one example, and I have several of these, I'll just give one, but we have a dog that we identified in the system. Dog's name is Ruby, and she was bred 3 different times to 3 different males. And if you look at that scorecard with nose tracking, et cetera, on there, her average scores for her puppies in 3 different litters, she had nose and tracking scores that were in the 11s category. That's not a coincidence. And there's no way you could identify that between a 105 and a 112. And that female did go on to produce her offspring are a significant component of Wire Hair Alliance breeders and what they're breeding today. And so those are the type of benefits that you can realize out of this system. If you go on to the next, the advanced hunting aptitude evaluation is a fantastic test. Everybody who's ever run the test loves it. It's great to see a young dog with, just enough training to be ready to hunt. And you get to see a lot of fun things happening because this dog has not been so trained, so obedient that it's afraid to make a move without your permission. So a lot of dogs get out there, start having a great time, really kind of clicking their heels together, and it's just a great event to watch. Plus, you now get to judge pointing, desire, all that stuff on a dog that's been force fetched. It's got to retrieve to hand. He's had water work. It's got to do a water blind, and he's going to do a drag, so he's got to be a reliable retriever. All of those things come together, and that, I think, that is for me, that's the breeder's test, and that's what I use primarily to determine the animals that I want to breed. We do have a higher level. I assume Chad will go into that, but and note the names of the tests: hunting aptitude evaluation, advanced hunting aptitude evaluation, and the third evaluation is performance evaluation. Totally different name, totally different test, totally different meaning behind what you're trying to accomplish with that test. This is a team of a dog and a handler. We're no longer looking at aptitude. Now we're looking at pure performance. Who that performance evaluation is all about. And it's similar to an invitational, but with more advanced water work, higher degree of difficulty of water work in it. But and do you want me to go into that too while we're at it, Chad?
Yeah, I pulled that up, but before we go, I just want to go back. Maybe talk about the multipliers, the 2 versus the 1s, and what the importance is there.
Sure. Well, if you look at the hay, there is no multiplier, and the reason for that was when we designed these tests, we didn't get the memo on which one of these categories was more important. So everybody's got an opinion on that. We let the breed clubs. Some breed clubs actually attach a multiplier to those categories because they have an opinion on that. I feel more like these are arbitrary, and I'll get to your question in just a second, Calvin. These are arbitrary numbers that have been assigned, like in the NAVDA scorecard. I value cooperation just as much as I value desire. So to me, it's not like we have dogs that don't hunt. I haven't seen a dog in quite a while, Pudelpointer or otherwise, that didn't really want to get out there and hunt. And cooperation is, I think, just as coveted. So when we get to the advanced, we did put a multiplier to the inherited subjects, and that's simply to create a greater weight for those over the trained subjects, because this is still what we value and what we're trying to breed for are these aptitudes. You can train any breed to retrieve a bird. That's pure training. There's nothing to do with genetics and creating a force trained dog that retrieves to hand. However, as you overlay that training, that changes what the dog is willing to do for you in terms of pointing, in terms of desire in the field. A dog that's been, you can steady a dog that's an unwilling participant, and when they go on point, they're not going to look like much. They're not going to have much style. They're not going to have much intensity left in them. But the very willing dog, the very cooperative dog, you can steady, and they're still going to point and look like $1,000,000. So, and on Calvin's question, so if you think of 10 as 100%, 5 is 50%. So a dog that earns a 10 has done everything that the judges expect to see out of it. When you get into 11, you've gone beyond expectations. And not every dog has an opportunity to get an 11 in every situation. But I can give examples. But if you see a duck search, for example, search behind the duck, and a dog does a 400-meter track over open water, that's something that's probably going to be considered for an 11. Even if you're doing a game drag and the dog encounters 2 or 3 different deer on the game drag and never comes off the drag, but completes the drag with no commands or no other interference from the handler, that would be a consideration for an 11. And then the 12, to get in the 12 category, there has to be some difficult circumstances involved. So now you're doing your 400-meter duck track over open water with 2-foot whitecaps, something like that, which I have seen done before. And those dogs are then rewarded for that particular performance. I've seen dogs run a field search where there was a quail in a tree, and we ran 6 dogs, and every dog kind of went down in there, nosed around a little bit. None of them found the bird because it was up in a tree. And 7th dog runs down there, smells around, shoves its head up in the air, goes on point, sticks the bird in the tree. So that dog possessed more ability than the other 6, and that gets rewarded within this system if it has an opportunity to show itself. So, and I think there was another question. Let's see, where's the chat on here?
Yeah, I
let's-
don't. Can you guys see the chat? So I'm sharing. I have it on my screen, but maybe it's not sharing it. So the question: what differentiates a 11 and 12 work from a 10, which we talked about? Is the hay track on feather or fur?
It's feather. It can be on fur if the opportunity presents itself. That's pretty rare. Every dog will have a track opportunity on feather if they want. If there is a fur track that presents itself in the dirt, like during the field work, we will score it, but we're not going to set it up with the rabbit. And that's the hay track is a live track. So I assume that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I was just seeing how it compared to the
Not a
HZP
direct.
test. I was just comparing it to HZP.
Are you there, Jeff? Did we lose you?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
I think I cut out for a second here.
Yeah, so I think it was Calvin. I'm not sure who mentioned, but they were comparing it to the HCP test.
Yeah, no, we don't go out and walk the brush for rabbits and spend that amount of time on tracking. Like I said, if a rabbit does present itself, it will be scored. So, all right.
Is the AHA drag, feather, or fur? Is the next one.
Handler's choice. Most chapters are gonna use ducks because that's what's available. The handler can provide their own fur.
And I have seen that. Next question, I see tattoo noted on the card. Is that microchip number? Is it checked like the German system does?
The tattoos are checked. And we don't currently have a way to check microchips.
Okay, that's it for questions. We'll go into the PE. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so this is a intense test. It can be run though at any event, any affiliate that hosts a test can run a PE. So it's not a once a year type event. It is run in a brace. The dogs, this is a different level. You know, the steadiness and the retrieving and all of that should be at a very high level. And the handlers should know what they're doing and know how to handle a dog, and backing is scored as well. And I would say what you see in the field, it's 1 hour. You know, you usually have 8 to 10 birds in the field, and the brace is usually usually do about 30 minutes and take a short break and make sure we're doing everything the way we want to do it. But the field work, I would say, is pretty similar to what you're going to see at something like an invitational event. When you get to the water work, though, there's 3 back-to-back water subjects. So that dog is in the water for, maybe an hour. There's no break in between. You're going to do a blind, then you're going to do what we call an independent search. That's just a ask, from a hunting standpoint, you have these 3 scenarios, right? You've shot a duck and it's dead, and you know where it's at, and you're going to handle your dog to that duck. That's the blind retrieve. You have a situation where you've crippled a duck and you don't know exactly where it's at, but you know the area that it's at. So you're going to send the dog out for an independent search. There's no point in you handling the dog because you don't know where the duck is. So the dog every tool in the toolbox to find the duck. But we don't have a duck out there. Manage the degree of difficulty.
Jeff keeps cutting out.
Yeah, you cut out, Jeff.
And the dog is asked to get on the scent trail of a crippled duck that we know hit the water, follow it, and recover it. So those are the water segments.
Yeah, you cut out a little bit, but I'll just fill in there. So what we heard was the blind, which everyone understands what that is. It's within gunshot range. We're not asking you to go 106 yards, nothing specific. It's typically going to be 40 to 70 yards, 80 yards, somewhere in there. Depends on the setup at the particular site. The dog immediately goes over and does an independent water search. So as Jeff mentioned, there's no duck put out. It's expected to cover everything in gunshot range. There's no time specifically for that. I've seen a dog get an 11 in about 7 minutes, and I've seen dogs get much less scores that take a lot longer. We typically always give the benefit to the dog, and if it takes 30 minutes, it takes 30 minutes. That doesn't happen often, but it's not pushed on time. It's more about the dog and the dog's ability. And then the last thing is the search behind duck. Those not familiar, that's where a duck is hazed off. 10 to 15 yards off the bank. It's placed in the water. It's got its primary flight feathers pulled. The duck is hazed off to where it's out of sight, typically, of the handler and the dog. It has to be 100% out of sight for the dog, though. But depending on the water, if it's 80 to 100 yards with good cover, and it's way out, we'll typically start that test. But the dog's expected to be sent in the direction where the scent cone was, where the duck was placed, and then use all of its ability to find the duck. Its nose, its intelligence, its swimming ability. A lot of times they end up on land, tracking ability, and retrieve that back to hand to the handler. That was the three water subjects. The only other thing I'd mention is we do have a blood tracking option as well. If you want to do a blood track, it's only with the PE level. Go ahead, Matt.
I had a question about that. So at the utility level in NAPS, you have a gunshot. Is there a gunshot at any portion of the PE test for the duck section, water section?
No.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. I know we're getting close on time. I want to mention this because I think this is important. I don't know if you guys are concerned or if you look at confirmation. I hope you will at least talk about it in your organization, because I think it's one of the most overlooked things that we have in dog breeding. I'm not going to go through all the details. I think it's pretty evident why we should do confirmation. Specifically, we want our hunting partners in our investment into the training and our friendship and love and our connection to a dog. No different than anyone that purchases one or buys one or chooses to pick a puppy. You want that dog with you as long as you can, and hopefully you're seeing a dog with good confirmation. I know I personally have seen it where you can have a dog that's still hunting at 13, 14, 15 years old. In fact, the last two dogs that I had that passed away, one was 18 and one was 16 or 17. Anyways, and both of them had to be put down because they weren't able to walk. But essentially, confirmation is important. It should complement a breeding program. Obviously you guys know best from the Pudelpointer breeding that you do and what you require there. But again, we do have it takes about an hour to do a confirmation. It's a very specific evaluation. Why I personally like it, because you also have a lot of people with hands on a dog, and you might notice if a dog has an issue with that, if there's something specific or if there's any confirmation or confrontation rather from the dog that's noted on the test. So, sharpness and those kind of things. If that's something that you think is important in your breeding program, you should take a look at confirmation, right? So we do look at the breed standard, the country of origin. We're looking at we pull right up the FCI data right from the country of origin for the dog, and we go through that verbatim. It's read out loud by one of the judges. Other judges are evaluating that. The head, the body, the coat, the tail, the feet, the mouth, everything, the angles of the dog, the front end alignment, the rear alignment. There's a lot of work put into it. There's a lot of angulation. The dog is also put in a sitting position and then asked to go retrieve, so you can see how it moves off seated position, how it moves, being trotted back and forth. Is it dog tracking or tracking, front and rear end misaligned with, a dog track versus straight. You're looking at all the angles in the front and the rear. I have done it with my personal dogs, and I personally find that it correlates very well. I have a male that has a 9 rear end and a 5 front end, and 9 times out of 10, and I'll find out again this week, when he goes If he gets lamed up, it's usually going to be in his front end with either sore paws or sore front alignment. And it's a great tool. Also, you could have some standards on breeding. I personally have my own with what a dog conformation evaluation minimum number should be for my liking in order to combat, early retirement, I guess is the best way to say it, and ensure that we have good lifespan on dogs. I know we're getting close. We're at time. What else can we say? What I would say, and this is not a sales pitch, but I think it needs to be said. We are not a breed club. We don't submit standards. We've been asked from different organizations to help produce, a standard or help produce a certain quantify a number. We typically don't do that. That's what you guys do, and you know that. We don't know that well. We can answer questions, and we certainly will help handhold along the way. We can, help compare maybe a scoring system question compared to, a different format or say a 4-point versus a 10. And we often do walk through those things with organizations. But we're here to serve the data up for folks like yourself, for breeders and owners and handlers and all the people who want to use the data, because the data is free and it's there. And, in my personal opinion, is it can enhance any breeding program if used properly. Obviously, you might look through there and say, hey, I don't see a lot for this specific breed, wire-haired Vizsla, although we've ran a few in the system. What I always tell people, the more dogs we get in there, the better it's going to be. Is it going to be, all this data right out of the gate? Probably not. But we've been around long enough that there is some good data in there. For the name brand dogs, I'll say, wire hairs, short hairs, Pudelpointers. There's been a few that have ran through the system. So I think we're very comprehensive. You're going to get a 10-point scoring system. If you pair the field, the water, the versatility, along with the confirmation, I think it's a very robust, solid data set that you yourselves can use as individuals or as an organization to look at breeding standards and what you might require for a certain standard, or what at least you might require for a certain score to have a conversation with. So, that's kind of the, get off the soapbox there, but I really think it's very comprehensive. I think the data is, if you're going to breed a dog, there's a couple of things people look at. One, which I disagree with, but I'll just say these things because I think they're foolish. I want to see VC and a VC. I hear that all the time. Well, they're not VCs, or, it doesn't matter. We all know you can train dogs to certain levels. It doesn't mean they should be bred. The other thing is, people want to go see the dog, which is highly recommended. You should understand, the sire of the dam. If you're purchasing it or you're a breeder and you want to identify a potential breed mate, you should see the dog. How does the dog interact with others? How does it hunt? You can walk behind it. I personally can look at our score sheets and look at our data and maybe look at other litter mates that ran or the sire and the dam. And I can get so much information on that. You can weed through a bunch of dogs without having to go put hands on them and see them. And at least, if you got a dozen to start with and they're all in the system, I guarantee you can come up with 2 to 3 that are very exceptional for multiple reasons. One, they always produce inherent traits, especially if they have confirmation completed. One's, they're going to, one of them or 2 of them are going to have stronger confirmation numbers, which you should be looking at for longevity and breedability. And, the other thing is, once you pare down that list, then go put your hands on a dog or go identify it. So, if I'm a breeder in any organization and I want to belong to the Pudelpointer club as well, those are things that I hope are going to be outlined to help me identify what I should do from a breeding perspective. So at least they're conversation points for you guys to talk about with a 10-point system. Probably ought to, I don't know if there's any more open questions or anything you didn't hear that you'd like to hear. This is a very broad overview, a little bit of history and what we're about, what we do. I'll say again, we take hunting the most serious. Even our judges are required to be hunters, and there's more questions if you want to be a judge in our system. There's more questions about your hunting background and what you do and how many dogs you've ran and handled and hunted than there is anything else. That's where most of the weight is, and that's the way we like to keep it. So those things are important for us. But I'll open it back up if there's questions we didn't
Calvin
get to.
has a question.
Yes, we've had a lot of discussion amongst ourselves regarding confirmation, and I have been an advocate of trying to trying to think of the word, invest in our members, in getting them to learn how to judge confirmation, and so we can give better information regarding confirmation on our dogs and so forth and such. But if you guys already have that, those pieces in place within the system, do you have like confirmation events or whatever that people can go and just get an evaluation on the confirmation of their dogs? How does that work? Is there a fee involved with that? Do you have to be a member or a non-member? Like, can you just give us a little more information on how that works?
Yeah, sure. So as far as confirmation, we've done both. We've tried to hold confirmation events with field and water testing. Some chapters have done that. We really leave it up to the chapter. I can say I've participated in that. It's difficult because it can be long days or long weekends. And typically it's held as a separate event. So in the Northeast this spring, they had a confirmation only event. It was it was at least 2 days. It might have been a 3-day weekend where I had 15 dogs or whatever it was. They just did confirmation only. There is a fee. I think it's $75, but it's up to the chapter. You know, there was some talk about maybe raising it to 100 just because of the length of time. It's usually going to be about an hour, maybe more. It's that detailed. You do need to be a member of the international in order to enter a dog, but you don't have to specifically be a member of that chapter, although we encourage it. And our goal is to have a confirmation judge and expert at every chapter as we grow. And we've got a great director of confirmation, Jared Deutsch, who's doing a fabulous job. We've brought so many more confirmation judges. We've brought more confirmation judges on probably in the last year than we have field judges. And it's really got a ton of traction. And I think it's super important. The one thing I'd say, both as my VHDF hat and both as my owner hat, it's kind of like, you know, going to the combine. It's correlated to football, and you know, how am I going to compare to all these other dogs or all these other people there? And you know, you have some self-pride, and you might have the best field dog and the best water dog, but if that dog has 2 or 3 major, you know, especially if it has faults, you really should know about them. You really should try to get those identified. You know, I don't have to tell you guys that, but you know, some of the backwardness that can happen, those dogs, you know, in my opinion, they shouldn't be bred. They still get bred sometimes because, you know, people, you know, look the other way. You know, if it has a butt bite or something that's minor and the dog is phenomenal, yeah, it probably still should be bred, and you worry about the butt bite later. And again, those are things for you guys to identify. But confirmation it's a very important tool in my perspective. And yeah,
the only thing we have to go on right now is what knob the judges judge. You know,
yeah,
98% of the time the code is judged medium dense, medium harsh. Most of the time it's incorrectly judged. You know, things like that. They don't judge like true confirmation. You know, eyes, bite, and coat is all they judge, and it's just not enough information.
Yeah, it isn't. We all know what that one is, and it's done as a courtesy, and that's the way that they've always had it, and we know that. Ours is much different than that. It's very inclusive. It's not Westminster, but I could tell you that it's very thorough. It's a 10-point system as well, like I mentioned, and you're going to have a good understanding. And again, I would recommend that you folks participate in one. I could tell you that the Northeast will likely have another event, at least that chapter will. That's in Pennsylvania. If there's any members that are close to that, you know, we're happy to, you know, come by and just hang out for the weekend, bring a dog. You don't have to. We'll let you right in there, and you can look and learn and see We're not as strict about those things either. In fact, I'll say, you know, at the last test I was at, which was just in August, we probably had the biggest gallery that I've ever seen, because we had 3 apprentice judges, we had 3 regular judges, we had a professional photographer. At some points, we had 20 some people walking braces for PE dog. And again, the handlers have to be able to accept that and allow that. But you know, there's talking. It feels like hunting. We're a little more fluid in what we allow, and it's really up to the handler what they're comfortable with, and you know, the size of the crowd and those sorts of things. So you know, again, for the confirmation, you know, we certainly let you folks participate and come and learn. It's a great opportunity. I can tell you from experience, once you go through it and you start to learn about it, it's kind of addictive, and you'll never look at your dogs the same way, because you're always looking at things and trying to correlate it to confirmation for sure.
Thank you.
Don't be intimidated by it. That's the personal hat I was going to say. It's intimidating because it's putting your child up there for everyone to look at, and you know, if Johnny's going to be able to play soccer or not when he's in college. Well, you know, not everyone wants to hear some of the things that are said, but again, that's why we have standards, and we go back to the origin and what the dog was bred and designed for and built for. And you know, we don't have judgment on that. You know, if the muzzle's too short, or the dog's, you know, 3.5 centimeters too short at the withers versus the standard, it's marked on there and it's scored accordingly.
Chad, where does aggression fall in this? I see you have the brace, and then obviously during confirmation testing, you can see if a dog's got at least, you know, aggression towards people. Where does aggression get evaluated, and how is that looked at in
It'd have to be something pretty obvious, Daryl. You know, if a dog growls a little bit because you got your hand, you know, like those things aren't they? It might be noted if it's seems to be more aggressive. We're not as fussy on that, but where I think it fits in the best is the confirmation, and where I think it's most important, because a dog's on a bench and it's got people around it for about an hour, and it's only going to be noted if there's an issue. So you can assume if there's no notes in it that everything is fine. And you know, we may make a note there, but it's got to be something that's worth noting. You know, if it's a couple of growls or whatever here or there, and you know, the rest of the hour it's fine, it's not going to be noted. And I know that's one of the things that people are intimidated by, but Jeff, feel free to, you know, obviously you've seen thousands of dogs, so feel free to jump in on that.
Daryl, we just had a test earlier this year, for example, in a PE, 2 males in a brace, and one of the males started a fight, and that was noted, right? It was annotated right on the scorecard, so that goes right into the database, public database. Anybody can see that. Anything that prevents the judges from doing their job would be annotated. But like Chad said, the best place to see temperament is when you got your hands on a dog for an hour.
Yep.
And like we had a test here 2 weeks ago, and one of the dogs was noted, you know, that it had just kind of a delightful temperament, because it stood there happily for an hour and let us pick and prod at it. Whereas the other ones, after, you know, 15 minutes, they're kind of tired of it. So, so those things get noted, and just, I guess to a little bit more on confirmation, and kind of to go back to Calvin's question, you know, Calvin, this confirmation piece and putting it together in a gun dog environment has been a monumental task. But we have a program in place that works. And we currently have a director of confirmation that is very willing to help anybody who is interested. And my recommendation, if you guys are interested, again, we're not conformers. We don't claim to know the best for each breed, but in terms of general confirmation and structure, we have study materials. We follow the Pat Hastings method, and we put this thing together over a period of time and finally came up with a system that works. And what I would recommend for you guys is, if you're interested in confirmation, the people that are interested in that, have them become judges, get in the apprentice program. They can be field judges and or confirmation judges, although we try to encourage all of our field judges to become confirmation judges. But they can get in the apprentice program and they can go to these events and they can learn. And then you can have, without 15 years of heartache trying to put something together, you can have confirmation judges in a couple of years for your dogs. So that,
Yeah, that sounds
and then-
great because, you know, I know the VPP, every dog has to pass their breed show in order to become breeding eligible. I'm not
Right.
looking to eliminate dogs from breeding necessarily, but I want the information on the dogs out there so people can see it and make smart decisions on who they want to choose for their stud or what females they're going to keep or not keep and stuff like that.
Right. And that was going to be my next comment, was once you get your confirmation judges that are up to speed, send them to Germany and have them go to a couple of breed shows in Germany or Austria or wherever, and really learn the breed, the nitpicky little things of the breed. And the other thing that goes, the last thing I'll say about confirmation is when you're breeding a dog and you want to have an edge, it's not going to come in your 30, 40, 50-minute NAVDA field evaluation. It's going to come with the confirmation. And that's going to be the factor that gets you over the next dog in line. And I'll give you a quick example. We, at our test 2 weeks ago, we ran the CSE, the confirmation structure evaluation, on Friday night before the test. It was about 100 degrees the day of the test. And by the time we got through the field work, most of the dogs coming in near the end, they were hurting pretty bad. And amazingly enough, the dog that got the highest score, there were really two of them that got higher scores in the confirmation. At the end of the field search, and at the end of the day, in fact, the dog that got one of the highest scores in confirmation had a 182 in the AHA test, and a 180 is a maximum score. And it came out of that field search and its tongue was not even hanging out, whereas the other dogs simply could not go anymore. And so you, as a judge in the field who also judges confirmation, you know, we get to see both of those things. And that's the total package on the dog. And you guys are already doing, you know, I'm not going to be doing this game too much longer because I've been doing it a long time. But when people ask me, what should I do as a breeder? What can I do to get an edge? I tell them two things. One, utilize embark, because if you embark all your puppies, you have a ton of information before they ever even go home. And I see you guys are already doing that. And two, do the confirmation, because we don't see bad field dogs. I think 68% of NAVDA NA dogs get a prize one. So, you know, we don't see too many bad ones. What we need to do is identify the exceptional ones. And the way you do that is to have not only an exceptional field dog, but a dog with exceptional confirmation. And then you've got the total package when it comes to breeding your dogs and your line of dogs. So, and I'll leave it at that.
If NAPS wanted to partner with or have a VHDF test or a confirmation evaluation, how do we go about, like, what's the best way to put that together? Just to like ring you guys up, or like, what do we do?
Yeah, so it's a real simple system. Any individual, any club, so NAPS can affiliate with VHDF. It's
Okay.
a small annual fee. I think it's $175. That pays your insurance. And once you're affiliated, all you got to do is host an event. And It could be a field test. It could be, you could do if you wanted to do a standalone confirmation. You know, we obviously got to have some minimums and that kind of thing to make it, you know, financially worthwhile. But
Mhm.
let's say you wanted to do a 2-day confirmation event. You could affiliate, and then there's a small fee for like our test fee. I think our test fee is $600 to host a test, and then your judges their transportation is provided.
Okay.
But once they get there, they're your responsibility type of thing. And then same thing for this confirmation, but the fee is even less. And I don't remember what the fee is. I don't know if the website's updated with that yet or not, but I think it's $200 or $300 or something for the confirmation. It's what they came up with. So yeah, it's real simple. Just get a hold of Chad or myself, and for the confirmation, you just get a hold of Jared Deutsch, who's also listed on the website, and that's all that's required. There's no big hoops you got to jump through or anything like that. It's just a matter of paying the insurance fee and then the event fee, and then we put the event online. People sign up online, and there is a little bit of a financial um, transaction that has to happen there because we only collect the event fees online. And
Mhm.
so that obviously goes into our account. And then what we do is reimburse. We we do a reconciliation between the event fee and your entry fees, and then we pay you for all the entry fees.
Okay.
That's how that works.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for the info. Well, does anybody have any more questions? I don't see any that popped up in the chat.
If there's anything as well that you guys would like, we'd love to do this. I promise next time I'll have the date nailed down. You know, the presentation's pretty easy. It's just more of the formality for conversation pieces, but you know, it's a lot of information. We didn't go into a lot of details in a lot of areas. It's really just an overview. We've done presentations just on confirmation for an hour, and could be all day. But we have some subject matter experts. So as Jeff mentioned, Jared loves doing these. If you want to talk about confirmation and the reasons why with pictures and details and things to talk about, he'd love to entertain that, and you know, maybe have if you guys are looking for guests at any point, if you want to talk specifically about the 10-point scoring system, or hey, how does your field you know 10-point system work, and you know what's some of the water work. We could get into the details and just pick one subject and have a meeting on that, or a couple subjects, rather than a broad brush, because there's a lot of things that, again, the 10-point system is going to outline, like intensity of pointing, the steadiness and manners intensity, and those are inherent traits. Like those are things that, you know, again, you know, Jeff can give tons of examples, I can give some myself, but those are the things that really are going to shine. And at the end of the day, you want a dog with a complete package to show its face and be picked out of a crowd of thousands, because those are the dogs you want to pay attention to for breeding. So you guys know that very well. And, you know, again, it's nothing special. We just have a system that outlines data that can give you more information to find and identify those dogs. That's the nuts and bolts of it. It really is. It's based on a system that's hundreds of years old, and you know, it's very similar to the European system. So
Okay. Yeah. Sue did ask, is there a guide, something like the aims and rules with NABDA, like a testing guide or that?
not specifically. We have some opportunity, and we've talked about doing, you know, maybe like some high res video and doing something similar, where we maybe video our tests and walk through it. We don't have that yet, and we don't have anything specific. There's a lot of information on our site. though, it does talk, if you go in there and drill down, you'll find it. We are going through a website evaluation and updates. It's probably going to take, longer than a year, but we're working on the beginning stages of that. But there, it talks about each of the tests, and, you can find what's required. It's not specifically with diagrams or anything like the green book would have, but there is information about each of the tests. And come out to an event. I know every time I do a seminar, a lot of times I'll get at least one person that'll call me and say, hey, I'm coming to this test, and we will make sure that you're able to walk braces or field work, water work, you're able to interact with judges. Maybe somebody would come and they can report back to your group. We'll let them participate, maybe even in some of the discussions that happen after, during judging, obviously, things that can be shared versus not, just to learn. And I think one of the things that is remarkable, when we talk about the 10-point system, but 411s, all three judges have to agree on that. And if we don't have all three, then it doesn't happen. But some of the discussion gets pretty lengthy. You're talking about what you saw. It's not just as easy as, hey, the dog reached 75, 76% or higher. You're talking about dissecting it in much more detail. So you're getting a lot more information, and I think you appreciate it more if you see it or hear it and understand it. When you see those scores, it has some weight to it. There's some gravity to it for sure. For a dog, Jeff just mentioned a dog that got a 182. I know right away when I hear that score, it's like, holy shit, that's actually a dog I want to go look up and see what dog that was, because it's a dog I should know.
Cool.
Yeah, the test rules with each subject in detail are online, as well as there are articles. There's a little bit of an article library on different things like how to host a test and those sort of things. So yeah, those are on the website, but not as we don't have a hard copy of anything. Everything's electronic.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions from anyone?
I see some comments about, looks like Jeff answered some about Canada and then more chapters. We love to have more chapters, and anyone that's interested in starting a chapter, let us know. It's really easy to do. It really is. It's pretty simple to do, having the grounds for it, getting a 503C completed and a board, and we handhold and walk through those, and we can certainly help. So we'd love to see more chapters as well. So let us know. But it does take some people to do it for sure.
Yep. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us tonight and walking us through all this. We're definitely trying to learn more about the other testing systems out there and what's available and what else we can do with our dogs. So really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. This was really educational and a good discussion.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, anytime, and let us know if you'd like more information or anything else.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Well, enjoy that hunting trip and good luck, and thanks again. Looks like
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.
Yeah. Have a great weekend. Rest of your
Good
week.
luck on your trip.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
We'll
All
see
right.
ya.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.